Hi guys, this is Kirapedze. I'm back again today with another video. Today I'll be speaking about something very important and critical in the recruitment process, which is vetting or background checks. I'll be using both terms interchangeably. So there are different parts to the vetting process, which is firstly the ITC checks, identification checks, qualification checks, as well as crim checks. So all of these are important in their own right, but affect you differently or to different degrees depending on the role, the type of role that you've applied for or that you're in the process for, or sometimes even the profession that you're in. For instance, when it comes to finance with the ITC checks, if you're in the financial space, ITC checks are very important. They take they are considered greatly, mainly because you're going to be dealing with finances. So the business needs to know how you're handling your finances, and one of the best ways to do that is to check how you handling your finances and how you handling your cash or how you handling your debt, right? And sometimes there are situations whereby people are not able to take care of their financial obligations for different reasons. For instance, we just came out of COVID where a lot of people were not working, and which meant their financial obligations took strain. So you need to be proactive in dealing with that or taking care of that by having a conversation with your debtors or people that you have agreements with, to say, guys, I've got such and such a situation. Can we make an arrangement and keep record of that? And as and when it's needed, you produce that, because every time every time a business does background checks on you, if your finances don't look very great, or your credit rating or your ITC checks don't look very great, it will reflect, right? Even when it looks great, it will always reflect. So you need to be proactive in taking care of that. You need to have documentation or a record of communications that you've had with your debtors. And we also do have situations or scenarios where an employer or potential employer would just generally want to hire people that have a good ITC check, right? For reasons known to them. Sometimes they do make those reasons. They do make us aware of those reasons because of sometimes past behavior from the employees or previous employees, but then sometimes they insist on having people that have good ITC checks. So for instance, I had a candidate at some point that was in the process that was actually liked by this client of ours. They liked this candidate. They wanted to offer this candidate. Unfortunately, this candidate had a clothing account that they weren't taking care of very well. Hence, why they were on the market. So we then had to go back to this candidate to say, dude, unfortunately, this is coming up. What's going on, right? And they explained to us. We then said, okay, you're gonna have to make an arrangement with these guys. Bring proof of that, and we'll submit it to the client and hear what they say. And then we also did justify, right, why this candidate was in that situation. Fortunately, the client was happy to offer them and to bring them into the business. So you get scenarios, different types of scenarios where people sometimes lose out on opportunities because they're not taking care of their financial obligations, right? And like I said, we just came out of COVID. Sometimes you're out of a job for longer, for much longer, which then means some aspects of your life take strain, right? And one of those aspects would be your your ITC background checks. And then we have identification. Then we so with ITC, guys. So another thing about ITC, sorry, another thing about ITC is that sometimes people suffer from identification theft, where sometimes someone gets mugged and their identity documents or identity card gets lost, your driver's license, whatever the case may be, gets lost, and those people are able to use that to open an account, to take a loan, and obviously will never service that loan, and that remains in your name. And people find out later on that they've got debt, right? There is ways of dealing with that, and there also are ways of sort of circumventing that from happening. So you're able to speak with so for instance, you're able to speak with what's this company, LexisNexis. um the companies that handle ITC information, companies that handle that information, you're able to have sort of a contact with them to say, if in case someone tries to open an account or take a loan in my name, or does anything that tampers with my ITC information, please give me a call, send me an email. If you don't reach me, here's a secondary number, or just make sure you reach me before granting granting access to that information. So you are able to do that to try and avoid identification theft that might leave you with debt that's got nothing to do with you. I've seen people do that. I've seen people go that route to avoid, be proactive in avoiding that from happening to them. So you're able to do that. So identification theft is a thing. It happens. It's happened to a lot of people, right? So however, there are ways of dealing with that. And then if that is something that has ever happened to you, you then you go to whatever furniture store, whatever bank where loan was taken, and you prove to them that it was not you and you've suffered from identification theft. And one of those ways is also going to the police station to open up a case and right, open up a file or have an affidavit. Yeah, affidavit that states that you suffered from identification theft. So that does happen, but there are ways of dealing with that, and then you have proof that you're dealing with it. And then if in case you're in a position where you have an opportunity where this might affect you, you then provide that proof to the company or to the business. And then there's identification checks. So as we know, people do, just similar to identification theft, people do lie about their nationalities and identities. So you need to make sure that you don't lie about that, because that's fraud and you can get arrested for it. So you need to make sure that you're honest about your identity and who you are. And so what happens, I think, yeah, there's something that I forgot to mention. So what happens is that when you're in the process, you're given a form. You're given a form where you put down your information, where you submit your information about your qualifications, information about your identity, information about your criminal background, whether you have been arrested or not. And then you do also submit submit information. You do jot down information about your ITC. So in that form, you also provide your signature, which then proves that you provided that information and you did not lie about it. So that's what happens. And that's I'm also mentioning this because um, people should not be able to do these checks without your consent. This form is actually called a consent form that needs your signature. Without your signature, a recruiter or whoever cannot conduct those checks without your consent. So that's called the consent form. So once you've signed that, you're also then saying that you filled that in that form truthfully. So your identity, you need to make sure that you're honest about your identity. You need to make sure that you're honest about your qualifications. So if you've applied for a role that requires a degree, if you don't have a degree, don't lie and say you do have a degree, because they are going to check whether you do or you don't have a degree. If it just requires matric, if you don't have matric, don't lie about it. So in fact, I've witnessed people in the recruitment process having lied about having a qualification. So this one time we had a candidate. It was actually very late in the year, around November, December, where we needed someone to start like ASAP, as soon as possible. So we took this candidate through the recruitment process, interviewed them, got them to sign the consent form, asked them to send us their qualifications, and because they had sent us the qualifications, and they were successful with the hiring manager, and they then assumed the role. We had provided them with a provisional offer that had a clause. No, it wasn't this case. But then this candidate was offered, and they had assumed the role. They had started working, and they were in the business. So, but we had also submitted those background checks to be checked, right? We were in the process of vetting them. But then, like I mentioned, it was later on in the year. It was during the Christmas break season. It was during that season where people had gone on Christmas, had taken their Christmas break, Christmas holidays. So these checks tend to take time during that time of the year. So because they had started working, when we went back to work, we had actually found out that this candidate, in fact, does not have a matric qualification like they had stated. And they also actually produced a fake certificate to say that they do have matric. And because they actually provided the certificate, that's one of the reasons why they were able to start, because they provided proof. They provided documentation that proved that they do have the qualification. So background checks come back. This candidate doesn't have matric. This candidate gets confronted, and this is actually fraud. They had actually committed a fraud because they had forged a certificate. They forged their matric certificate, and they also lied on the consent form that they do have the qualification. So this candidate then had to resign because the company was faced with having to open a case with this candidate against this candidate. Sorry, the business was faced with having to open a case against this candidate because they didn't have the qualification. The candidate then decided to resign, because then they would have had a fraud case against them. They decided to resign, and off they went. So you do come across people lying about taking chances and lying about the qualifications that they have. People lie about having degrees. we do conduct checks on that, find that people lied about it. Sometimes we find out early enough, sometimes not. So and some, you don't even think that because you stated that you obtained your qualification in a different country, we won't be able to find out. We are able to find out. We are able to get that information from whatever varsity that you said you qualified from. So you won't get away with it, right? So that's the qualifications checks. So another step is the crim checks. Phew, guys, crim checks. Crim checks, it gets sad sometimes because people sometimes don't know. Just like with ITC, people don't know that that they have a criminal record, and that happens is because of various reasons. Sometimes people bribe their way out of a system, and they're told that this won't creep up on you, and find that this person had to actually appear before a magistrate, and because they did not appear before a magistrate, this person then gets the sometimes it said that this person there's a warrant of arrest that's issued against this person because they had not appeared before the court, and not appearing before court is actually against the law. It's actually it's actually contempt of court. Yeah, it's contempt of court. So guys, I did my homework on this, spoke to legal people, and they confirmed, because some of these things are actually legal terms, right? So I did do or conduct my research on it. So you find people go through stuff like that. So in terms of what I've seen, what I've seen firsthand is that people don't know. Like this one guy, he had committed a crime when he was a minor. He was 16, and when we were going through this process with him, he was 32, and only then he found out that he had a judgment against him. So this guy actually stated on the consent form that they don't have a criminal record because they were under the impression that they didn't have, and I'll explain why. So we had submitted this candidate under the impression that they don't have a criminal record, and just before they were offered, or just when they were offered, we found out that they do. And actually the client, the hiring manager, liked this candidate and wanted them to assume the role. Unfortunately, because they had a judgment against them, and it was they needed someone very urgently. They wouldn't be able to wait for him to get it expunged, because it was well over 10 years, because for most judgments it takes about 10 years to get a criminal record expunged. Sometimes you can't get it expunged, sometimes it takes about 5 years. So it varies from case to case, right? So this guy had assaulted someone when they were 16 years old. They went through court. The charges against them were dropped. They then They further went on to try and find out if this was going to affect them in the future, and they were told that it was not going to affect them in future because they were a minor, which was not true. Because what happens when you get arrested is that you at the police station, what they usually do, or what they do, is that they take your fingerprints, and your fingerprints are taken down for two reasons mainly, which is for stats purposes, and it does also constitute as admission of guilt. when they've taken down your fingerprints, it does constitute as admission of guilt. So, for instance, okay, so this guy had, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this guy had appeared before court. Their fingerprints were taken and submitted, and that then resulted in them incurring or sustaining a criminal record against them, and that affected them. And unfortunately, they could not assume the role anymore, right? Or they could not take advantage of the opportunity. The hiring manager and the business could not hire them because it was against their policy. And this is one of the main reasons why it is recorded that you do have a criminal record. So it varies from case to case. So sometimes what happens is that, because this happens a lot, people get arrested on the road for DUI, which is driving under the influence. You get arrested at a roadblock, you taken to the police station, take a breathalyzer at the roadblock. If it's over the limit, obviously that's when you go to the police station. Excuse me, that's when you're taken to the police station. That's when you sorry, you get taken to the police station. Your fingerprints are taken. Sometimes what happens is that you get out. If you're arrested at the police station, you get it out by paying a fine. That fine is also an admission of guilt fine. It does constitute and it does stand as you admitting that you were guilty of breaking the law, right? So those are some of the things that happen. Sometimes people drive without a license. That's another common one that I used to come across. That people get arrested for driving without a license. And driving without a license in South Africa, a valid driver's license is against the law and is a criminal offense. And because of that, you get arrested, and that does translate into a criminal record. So those are some of the things that happen. So just before I go on further, guys, you need to make sure that you take care of these things, and you need to do all you can to avoid some of these things as best as you can, because these things have a very huge ripple effect. They are far-reaching, especially in your career. They do creep up on you. They do cause you to lose out on great opportunities. They also do have they also potentially you having to or being able to travel abroad, or exploiting or taking advantage of opportunities abroad or outside of South Africa. It does affect you, right? Because you have a judgment against your name. So that's another one. So what happens, like I said, it takes about 10 years for you to for a criminal. Sometimes it takes 10 years, sometimes 5 years, sometimes never, depending on the case. So I've had a scenario where a candidate of mine, they knew about their criminal record, or they knew why they had a criminal record. They were actually arrested when they were in varsity. They were caught with dacha, marijuana, which was then regarded as an illegal substance. It was regarded as an illegal substance. Then they were arrested for that. They then sustained criminal records, even though they were released on bail, or after paying that fine that they had to pay. But the criminal record stood. So it had with this candidate, it had been, I think, about 9 years. So when we were in the process, it was about 9 years. Told them that they needed to deal with this. They then started the process to deal with it, because it was about 9 years. They started getting, I think, they first got a police clearance. They then went they went pillar to post, but then eventually the criminal record got expunged. It got expunged, and it no longer appeared against them every time, because this was a contractor. It was one of the people that I would contact every time we had contract positions in the field, right? It was one of the people. So every time I contacted them and submitted them for a potential opportunity, I'd have to conduct those checks. So upon conducting those checks, I found out that this guy's criminal record was expunged, right? It does get expunged. And if you do know that your criminal record is older than 10 years, and you can get it expunged. It does fall under those cases that whereby you can get it expunged. Start the process, guys. Do it. Follow it up. If you know that you've been arrested, you did everything that you needed to do, or you served time, whatever the case may be. But as long as because this thing does not automatically get expunged, you need to follow up. You need to get a police clearance. You need to do due diligence to get it expunged. It's up to you. The onus is on you. It doesn't automatically disappear. So this is my advice to you guys. Deal with these things. Make sure that you take care of them if you do know that you've suffered or you've sustained or incurred a criminal record. And then there are cases like COVID. At the height of COVID, there was a curfew. There was it was compulsory for all of us to wear a mask, especially in public spaces. So some people, unfortunately or fortunately, got arrested during COVID for violating COVID-19 protocols. So, however, with that, upon researching some parts of this, I found out that this was one of the very few times ever in our law, where the law was continuously being amended because of COVID. So because of that, a lot of people's criminal records got expunged, even though it was less than 10 years, even though they did not go through, they were not sentenced, or the offense had happened within that 10 years, or before that 10 years that I was talking about, right? So there was also an article for several days on the news where they were mentioning how that thousands and thousands of criminal records were being expunged because people attended to those cases. They attended to those cases because laws were being changed. People got arrested this week for driving late at night or after curfew, and then next week that law gets changed. You see, it was a bit unfair. So people attended to those things, and those criminal records got expunged. So again, if you were arrested during that time, and for having violated COVID-19 protocols, you need to find out if whatever it is that you were arrested for does qualify, or you can get it expunged, right? You need to follow up on that. And then there are cases whereby some laws in our country, even outside of COVID, some laws in our countries have been changed or amended. For instance, people drinking in public. People drinking in public right now, people don't get arrested anymore for drinking in public. In most public spaces rather, people don't get arrested anymore. But then people used to get arrested for drinking in public, which was regarded as public indecency. People got arrested for those things, um, but those a lot of those criminal records have been expunged because the laws have been amended. So if you were one of those people, you need to attend to it again. So what this video is about, guys, is to just make you aware of the importance of this process in the recruitment in the recruitment stage, or when you're in the process of getting a job, or in the recruitment process. These things do have great impact on whether you do or you don't get an opportunity, right? Because they've got a lot to do with the laws of our country, in the case of in South Africa. So you need to make sure that you attend to these things. You need to make sure, like I said, that you avoid getting yourself in trouble with the law as much as possible. If you don't have a driver's license, guys, don't drive. If you're under the influence, guys, don't drive. Whatever the case may be, don't do it. Don't assault people. Don't assault people unless obviously it's things like self-defense. That's a whole different story or scenario. There are a lot of other scenarios where people incur or sustain criminal records when they have already assumed a role, when they are already in an organization, and that creeps up on them. But that usually gets dealt with by HR. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna bring in someone. I'm gonna have a conversation with someone on this platform that is in that space, where we're going to be discussing the same matter in length, or we'll be discussing the same matter in a different case, in a different case scenario, where someone is already, when someone is already in the role, or someone is being discriminated against for having a criminal record, when the company did not state that they can't assume, or they can't hire people with criminal records, because there are cases like that where people get discriminated against, which is against the law. So we will be discussing this in another episode. But then for now, guys, I just wanted to make you aware of these things, that these things do happen, and these things do affect people out there a lot of the time, which is really, really sad, especially if you didn't know about it, or if it was beyond your control, or if it was something that something that was imposed on you. So for instance, identity theft, so it does get really sad. Or it's also sad to see someone lose out on an opportunity because they didn't know. So yeah, guys, please, thank you for watching. Please share this episode with people that you think it might be helpful to. And till the next video, nginithanda nonke 99.